First up, though, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is slated to meet Myanmar State Counsellor Aung San Suu Kyi today in the morning amid the Rohingya Muslim crisis. This is Modi's first bilateral visit to Myanmar. The Prime Minister is in the country at a time when it's making headlines for all the wrong reasons. There are reports of a massive exodus of Rohingya from Myanmar's Rakhine state to neighbouring Bangladesh. Now, leaders in the country, including the State Counsellor Aung San Suu Kyi, are expected to brief the Prime Minister on the Rohingya issue. Suu Kyi is also expected to talk to him on the activities of the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, which India has described as a terrorist organisation. Now, as far as the Myanmar conflict goes, let's take you through some of India's concerns. It is that the Rohingya conflict could trigger another insurgency in Myanmar. There are no less than 8 insurgent groups already. 4, including the Rohingya Salvation Army, are attacking Myanmar's army. Now, if the conflict expands, it could destabilize the state. There could be outside intervention, or the army could take over, crushing the young democracy. Now, Myanmar is a crucial link in India's Look East policy. It is a member of ASEAN with which India is building close economic and political ties, and to counter China's hegemonic presence. Being one of India's strategic neighbours, Myanmar also shares more than 1,600-kilometre long border with a number of northeastern states, including the militancy-hit Nagaland and Manipur. Now, Prime Minister Modi will use his visit to leverage India's ties with the Myanmarese government. India is also likely to expand its development program in that country, help build capacity in its government by training its nationals and deepening its involvement in the country's democratic growth. China is also the reason why India needs to be on good terms with Myanmar. China has invested heavily in the country, developing ports, roads and highways, buying gas, and is a profitable market for Chinese goods. It has enabled the Chinese to expand into Myanmar in strategic terms and deepened India's insecurities in the northeast. The country is also a useful ally in helping India tackle the threat posed by insurgent groups in the northeast, such as the United Liberation Front of Assam, the Naga rebels, and of course others. Myanmar also gives India intelligence as to the location and movement of such groups that use its territory as their base. Meanwhile, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has appealed to the Myanmar authorities on Tuesday to end the violence in the country's Rakhine state, which he warned was creating a situation that could destabilize the region. WION's political editor Kartikeya Sharma joins me live on the broadcast now. He is in Myanmar for the Prime Minister's visit. Good morning, Kartikeya. It's an interesting time for Myanmar itself. It's a young democracy. It's facing a crisis in that very short period of being a democracy. What sort of challenges does India's Prime Minister face while on this visit?
Well, see, the challenge is that it's a controlled democracy, and the military also has its say. So India will have to look after its interest while engaging with the democratic forces without I would say, trying to engage with Aung San Suu Kyi at the expense of the military, because ultimately military calls the shots. Nothing moves beyond the military, behind the military and without the military. So India needs to take care of a lot of things there. You have a Chinese influence here in terms of investments. Myanmar traditionally has been closer to Indian subcontinent than China, but of late, because the ability of China to do business with any country, whether democracy or dictatorship, has made things tougher for a country like India, where democratic traditions are strong at the lowest levels. So that's where the challenge lies. So the Prime Minister is going to go for a sort of a civilizational connect, which overrides current dispensations. So, you can be Democrat today, Communist tomorrow, and you might have a military regime, but at least Myanmari society's connect with India will remain. And I think that's where the focus of the Prime Minister will be. It might look soft on approach, but it changes the rule of the game.
Absolutely. But Kartikeya, tell me also, right now, this is a time where a number of groups are asking Aung San Suu Kyi, a Nobel laureate herself, to speak up. She's been particularly silent as far as the Rohingya crisis goes. Coupled with that, Prime Minister Modi is meeting with her at this point in time. This is a sensitive issue. It is an issue that has raked up sentiment in India, in Bangladesh, in Myanmar itself, and of course in other Muslim majority countries such as Indonesia and all the way to Australia as well. So does the Prime Minister obviously keep all of these, will be keeping all of these points in mind as he negotiates this tenuous time for Myanmar during this visit?
See, there are a lot of, like for example, I'll give a example to you. For example, the issue of Rohingyas. A lot of people say it has received a lot of publicity in India. Supreme Court has seized of it. Supreme Court says the BJP, the ruling dispensation, says that they are all illegal immigrants. That's correct. But now you look at it from the perspective of when India is in Myanmar in terms of top brass. There is no talk about it, even Aung San Suu Kyi has not spoken about it. So, the whole attempt is being made at least to talk about those issues which are essential to India and which are only essential to the Indian interest. Because, there are 20 lakh Indians living in Yangon only, and they're all in business and they have not been tapped at all. And for example, the connections are many. Bal Gangadhar Tilak spent 6 years in Mandalay. Or for example, Rabindranath Tagore's house was there. Azad Hind Fauj headquarter used to be in Yangon. So these are the interlinkages which will be explored from today afternoon till tomorrow afternoon. This is something very important. No Prime Minister goes for a sightseeing, but he has chosen to do that for 24 hours to strengthen the point that the relationship is beyond junta and Aung San Suu Kyi.
All right, Karthik, also Myanmar is a very strategic place in terms of its position geographically, and of course keeping in mind India's look east policy. It's also interesting that this meeting comes after the Prime Minister has just recently met with China, whose advances into Myanmar and other countries in the region are of concern to India.
Absolutely. When I went to Manipur for the elections, I could, I drove to More and drove 20 kilometers inside Myanmar. And I suddenly realized that, if the roads are good, you can start from Calcutta and in 24 hours, 30 hours, depending on the road, you can cross to Myanmar, and the roads were damn good, pretty good. And, you can cross into Thailand, Cambodia, and this is what the Kaladan project is. This is what it does. River, road, and you connect it with Manipur. Now the problem is that it goes through a province called Sittwe. Now that is insurgency affected. So that is where the Indian interest lies. And secondly, when you talk about the interest of the other nation, obviously you have Gwadar, Hanban Tota, listening posts in Coco Island, and it is primarily because of India's fault. One has to understand that no one likes moral policing in the neighborhood. Everyone wants their own course of action. Every nation state has its history. Every nation state will have its own area of violence. Nations are not forced built like that. But that does not mean I'm saying that the violence is necessary to the process of nation making. I'm saying that every nation goes through the process. So no one wants the moralizing thing. So I think India, also in the context of South Asia, has to avoid that moralizing voice. Rest can be engaged with, Aisha.
All right, we'll leave it at that, Karthik. Thanks very much for joining us this morning with those details. We'll, of course, get back to you through the day for more updates on the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Myanmar.